Welcome to everybody joining us. We're just waiting for the room to get full with admitted attendees, and we'll get started right promptly at 11:30. Welcome to session 3B. We'll be getting going here in a minute. All right, looks like it's 11:30, so hopefully everybody has gotten loaded into the session room. Welcome to the traffic conference. I miss seeing all of your smiling faces in person. This is session 3B, Improving Operations in Work Zones. I'm Kelly Riggett with Lochner. And we have 3 separate presentations today. So we are really trying to cram everything in here to your hour of time. So we thank you for joining us. And we're going to get right into the presentations. I'm not reading bios. So if you would like to read more about any of our presenters, you can find their bios in the information booth. So I'm going to welcome our first presenter, Tom Mashoni from the Turnpike, who's going to be talking about the PA Turnpike Work Zone Safety Subcommittee. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Kelly. As Kelly said, I'm going to be presenting the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission's Work Zone Safety Subcommittee and summarizing our efforts over the last 6 years. So I'll do my best to summarize 6 years worth of efforts into 20 minutes. But I'm going to cover an intro and background a little bit, talk about some key initiatives that the subcommittee has worked on over the past 5 years, and also talk about some lessons learned. Here you can see our Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission strategic plan. This shows our vision, commitment, and our values. And you can see safety is a big focus at the Turnpike Commission. We're safety focused. It's part of our vision, and it's one of our top values we always mention. In 2012 and 2014, we had 2 Turnpike maintenance employees that were killed in work zones, and it brought to this issue of work zone safety to the forefront of the commissioners, our CEO and COO's minds, and they pushed for the creation of this Work Zone Safety Subcommittee. So this was started in early 2015. And everything we talk about today will be 2015 through present. Here you can see a cut of our crashes. So on the left there you see the pie chart showing Turnpike crashes in general. So out of all crashes on the Pennsylvania Turnpike, 9% of those are work zone crashes. And then you can see of the 9% piece of the pie, on the right there, it shows what the percentages are of each type of work zone crash. So we have, the majority of our work zone crashes, 67%, are in our total reconstruction projects. These are mainly due to the length of the project. It's out there for several years. It goes over the winter. It's narrow sometimes. We have the cattle sheets with barrier on both sides. We shift traffic, and sometimes we have higher speeds because they don't see the workers out there, workers present because they're behind barrier. We also have 24% in other construction areas. What that includes our mill and pave projects, our bridge replacements, our rehabs. It also includes sign and pave marking projects and other miscellaneous projects. And then we have 9% that is in our maintenance patterns. Here's a slide showing the structure of our Work Zone Safety Subcommittee, so you can see all the different departments that are involved. So we have many different departments at the Turnpike Commission that are involved in the Work Zone Safety Subcommittee, as well as partners outside the Turnpike. So we have Pennsylvania State Police that comes to our meetings on a monthly basis, FHWA, PennDOT, and then the general consulting engineer, who's Michael Baker. This slide here shows our core principles. So we have 5 main cores for the Work Zone Safety Subcommittee. And the main one there is to reduce traveler exposure to work zone. So this is the concept that if you can eliminate the work zone, you would eliminate the work zone crashes. So if the work zone is not there, you can't have a work zone crash. And we can do this by minimizing exposure to the motoring public through several ways, one of which is improving our operational efficiencies. So improving how we set up and tear down the pattern, consolidating efforts, so combining efforts of maintenance and construction to get them done so we're not having separate patterns in the same general area. Eliminating any excess or unnecessary work by speccing better products that will last longer and prevent us from having to go out there on the road. Also limiting operations to times of day when historically traffic is lower. So in a lot of our areas, this would be nighttime work. So it does cost something, it costs more, but it increases work zone safety if there's less people on the road traveling through the work zone. We're also big on standardizing our work zones. This is something we've worked on hard over the last 5 years, updating our MPT standards and being consistent with our work zones across the state. So that way people, when they travel through a maintenance pattern, a construction contractor pattern, or whatever type of pattern it might be, that looks the same, whether they're near Ohio or near New Jersey on the turnpike. We don't want them to see different things as they travel across the state. We also wanted to apply our lessons learned. So what we want to do here is track our initiatives, so that way when we find things that work, we get them into our design projects moving forward. We don't want to just find something that works on one project and forget about it. We want to make sure it gets included on the next project so we continue to see the benefits and reduce the work zone crash rate. We also want to embrace innovation, so making sure we're always looking at new and innovative ideas, products, but also looking at the work zone safety subcommittee itself, making sure we're following the newest procedures, and we also incorporated our innovation council into this to come up with new ideas, so we're not getting stagnant. And then also promoting work zone safety awareness. We work with PennDOT on this, and with Federal Highway. Every year we do a robust work zone safety campaign, and the thought is, to get the word out to the public so they know when they're traveling through work zones that there are people that work here, and it's important for them to travel safely through the work zone so they get to their destination, but also so our workers get home safely to their families at the end of the day. This slide here shows our crash rates, and at the Turnpike Commission, we monitor our crash rates for $1 million spent, as it directly relates to the exposure to traffic to work zones. So the more money we spend on our projects, the more projects we have out there, the more crashes we would see. So as you can see here, we've been working hard. We started in 2015, and we had about 250 crashes per year on average when we started, and we've worked on that, and now you can see it's down. Currently, we're just over 100 there. And the thought is, continue to work on this. We're not happy until it's at zero, so we have a long way to go, but we are seeing some benefits. This screen here shows our work zone dashboard. This is something that we created in the last year, and we have multiple parts to this. The first phase, which we started first, was a live dashboard that had a map. It shows a map of the whole state, where the construction projects are, whether they're contractor or maintenance, what type of work it is. It's a direct feed from our ENS system, and it shows you live up to date where the work is, what's going on. We incorporated what you see now is our crash statistics. This is what we look at on a monthly basis in our work zone safety subcommittee. So we're looking at crash rates, TMA hits, how many crashes per $1 million spent. We dive into specific projects, and this whole dashboard is interactive, so you can click on things and do filters. What's nice about it is you can dive into one project if you have a specific project you're interested in and want to find more out about where the crashes are happening, or what's the prime crash factor. So this has been a very useful tool. And then moving forward in 2021, phase 3 will be adding the automated work zone speed enforcement to this dashboard, as we've had that in place for about a year now. We also look at our TMA hits. So our TMAs are truck-mounted attenuators. They're basically a shadow vehicle that has a crash cushion on the back that's designed to take an impact. And it's our last form of defense before the inerrant vehicle would get to the workers. And in recent years, we've seen an alarming rate of these TMAs getting hit, largely due to distracted driving. So we looked more in depth at when are these TMA hits happening, who's, as a contractor maintenance, who's setting the pattern. So you can see here on the previous, that one there, it shows the contractor set up and tear down. So you can see when they're setting up and tearing down, we see an increased TMA hits. So that's, when they're setting the pattern or removing the pattern, which the TMA is out there. And they tend to be later in the evening or early in the morning when they're setting their pattern, so they do more night work. Our maintenance crews, on the other hand, are working more like 8 to 2. So you can see, again, when they're setting up the pattern around 8 to 9 a.m. and removing it between, around lunchtime, noon to 1 time frame, that's when we're seeing our TMAs get hit. So this slide here is an animation that shows kind of what we've been seeing in our work zones over the past few years. Previously, we installed signs on both sides of the road, so we have to set up a mobile lane closure. Set the signs on the left, and you can see it creates a weave condition here with vehicles on both sides of the roadway. So you're almost pushing the vehicles right into the TMA that's in the left lane. Once they set the signs on the left, they would turn around at an access gate or a maintenance shed, an interchange, and then come and set the signs on the right and then take the lane. So you can see it not only was increasing exposure in the left lane, but it took longer for them to set this pattern, sometimes almost an hour to set up and an hour to tear down because of this loop. Some of our access gates are 5 miles away from the work zone. So we worked hard over the last few years with FHWA, with PennDOT, and I know they're issuing their new 213, which will have some of these details also. But we initially eliminated the median signs in narrow medians. So these were areas where the median was very narrow. It was unsafe to put a sign in the median to begin with, which a lot of the turnpike being built in 1940 has a narrow median, a 10-foot median with a 2-foot barrier, and then it allows for 4 foot to the yellow line. So what we did was we eliminated the signs on the left and we added 2 PCMS. So as the customer would see, come into a lane closure, they'll see 3 PCMS indicating that the right lane is closed to merge left. And you can see here, we implemented these changes first in 2017. 2018 was probably the first full year where we saw the benefits of this. And we went system-wide as well. After we piloted this in narrow medians, in 2019, we made it the entire system. So no matter if you have a narrow median or a wide median, really made the signs on the left. You can see the drastic decrease in TMA hits. We did have a small spike here in 2020, and we actually, that was back in the spring, it was mostly maintenance operations, mobile operation in the left lane where they were doing sweeping and medial ops. So we actually suspended maintenance, other activity there until we could figure out what to do to prevent these. And we actually added to our standard an additional PCMS on the right-hand side to let customers know that the left lane is closed ahead, just to get them to move over. This slide here shows our total reconstruction. So this is one of the more challenging things we do on the turnpike is we rebuild the roadway. Again, we're an old road. We've been out there since 1940. So a lot of our original concrete is still under there, and it causes problems with our pavement. So to do this, we have the two main stages. Now, the first stage, we maintain traffic in this existing 12-foot lanes. Stage 2 is our more challenging phase. So this is where we shift traffic to the outside. We maintain the 12-foot lanes, but we're in a narrow, what we call a cattle chute area with no shoulders. So we have barrier on both sides or guide rail on one side, and we paint the lines right on the barrier. This is actually, it becomes very challenging to try and assign this to trucks. So trying to get commercial vehicles, which are now restricted in stage 2 to the left lane only, to be in the appropriate lane. So here are some things which we worked on through the Work Zone Safety Subcommittee, some initiatives to help get the message across to keep trucks out of the right lane. When trucks are in the right lane, things like them hitting the guide rail or getting hung up on the guide rail and crashes with what we call Plan X or turnpike closure occur. So we did extensive work here to try and get the trucks in the left lane, and you can see some of the things we did here. We added overhead symbol signs to get the trucks in the left lane. We reached out to PSP to get them to help assist by sitting in the work zones. We actually worked on getting a color portable change of message sign, you can see on the far right there, with the same symbols. We put down pavement markings in our A31 to 38 project, which is on the northeast extension between Lansdale and Quakertown, again with the truck symbol sign, and we also used CB Wizard radio. So as the truck driver is driving down the road, would over broadcast on their CB Wizard radio and tell them trucks, buses, left lane only, and which milepost on the turnpike. So in case they didn't see the sign or couldn't read the regulatory signs for whatever reason, there's an audio message also. This slide here shows some challenges we also had in our total reconstruction project. So this one was our 202 to 206 project. And what we had happening was the trucks, as they came into the work zone, they shifted to the outside for that stage 2, and they were consistently hitting this guide rail. So much so that we had to close the road down several times, not just for the accident recovery, but for the guide rail repair. Because, again, we're in the cattle chutes here to get the equipment out there and the post pounder and put those panels back in. It's too wide to even maintain a lane of traffic, so we had to close the road down sometimes for extended periods of time. And the detour in this area was not desirable. It was from Breezewood to Carlisle. So you can see it's a long detour, and that we lost toll revenue. So we worked on, what you see on the far right there, putting temporary concrete barrier there on the right-hand side. And once we did that, we noticed that the crashes, we actually didn't have any more crashes in this specific area. We had some scrapes, but the tractor shutters just kept on going. They didn't get caught in the guide rail, it didn't close the roadway. And what we did because of this, We actually added this to our design consistency guidelines, and we're putting this in our new set of reconstruction projects. We have guide rail on the right side. When we shift into the project for the first 500 feet, we're replacing that guide rail with barrier. And then if it happens to be a curve on the curve alignment there as you approach the work zone, we're carrying that through 500 foot through the point of tangency. So the thought is here, to prevent the crashes from occurring, keep the roadway open. And even though we had quantities in there for guide rail replacement, it's saving the commission on that cost as well. Some other things we're looking at for our total reconstruction projects, you can see we put in temporary snaps. These are rumble strips on the right side. We had some issues with our CMVs, the commercial vehicles, driving off the roadway completely. So we put those on there to help keep them on the road. We also put in increased delineation. You can see what we call the candy cane delineation there, the orange and white striped delineation, again, to help delineate the shoulder there so the trucks wouldn't get stuck in the mud. We also put down durable pave markings, so polyurea through the work zones to help give wet night reflectivity. And then we put speed display signs. We found that speed display signs can help decrease speed through work zones about 3 miles per hour. So we put 3 of those in advance of our projects, and we added to our specifications to have them spaced every 2 miles throughout the project. So, if it's a longer project, they're not going to get in the work zone and forget about their speed. We're going to remind them constantly as they're traveling through our work zones. Some technology initiatives. You can see there we've worked with our navigation apps. We have an agreement with Waze and Google, and we're displaying our work zones in those apps. The Haas Alert, which is a pretty cool tool. I know Todd Lease mentioned this yesterday. It basically, on our emergency responders or our work trucks that have this device on there, and when they activate their amber light, it sends a notification right to Waze. So immediately, anybody who's using that app will get a notification that there's a slow-moving or stopped vehicle on the roadway ahead. ATMS integration, what we're doing there is we're integrating with ATMS. We're changing our ENS system over, and this will help us get all of our work patterns entered appropriately so that we can get our message boards turned on and utilize our DMS effectively and coordinate with our smart work zones in specific projects moving forward. And then on the far right, you can see our tunnel swift gates. If you haven't been through our Tuscarora tunnel project yet, you need to check that out. They're automated gates that swing open and close the lane. Basically, again, helps increase operational efficiency and preventing boots on the ground. And we have that condition Sunday evening through Friday around midday at Tuscarora Tunnel. So if you drive there through the week, you get to see that in action. More initiatives we implemented. The LED hard hat light there on the right. We issued this to all of our maintenance employees. They wear this at nighttime. It provides 360-degree visibility to our workers. We also implemented on the bottom right there, you can see a sequential cone light. So we have these in that's specific lights for our cones, for our maintenance patterns. We also use it on our channelizing devices for our contractors. So at nighttime, it lights up the taper, and it's sequential, so it encourages an early merge. You can see on the bottom left there, our work zone safety memorial. We take that around to different events, and in the center you can see it was at a Penn State game in 2019. And we also showcased our virtual reality training. We had virtual reality training for MPT standards, and we actually allowed customers to experience what it's like to set and remove cones so they can understand the exposure that our workers go through on a daily basis. I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. Automated work zone speed enforcement has had a big effect on our work zone crash rates. I won't go any more into this because Hannah and Ben will touch on this later in the session. And then some things we're continuing to work on as we move down the road. Milled and uneven lanes are something we're going to look further at in this next calendar year. We did make some changes to our standard drawings to show message boards in advance of the milled or uneven lane. We allow 2-inch drop-off as you go into our uneven lanes situation. So we're telling motorcycles which lane to be in. That they're probably the biggest customer we need to notify of the uneven lanes, but we notify all customers which lane is milled. We're encouraging them to stay in lane through this condition. Speed limits are reduced to 55. So moving forward, we're just going to look at what other ways we can try and minimize our exposure in uneven lanes. One of which is in areas where we have high traffic volumes, requiring the contractor to pave whatever is milled out the same night in our through-lane sections. Tunnels are another area we're looking at. This is an area which can be very tricky. We reduce our speeds, which are normally posted at 70. As you approach the tunnel, we go down to 55, and then when we go bi-directional crossover, we go 40 miles an hour in the tunnel. So we've had a number of Mirror crashes, mirror strikes here. So as the tractor trailers go through, you can see the two tractor trailers there go through the tunnel. They end up striking mirrors. So we're working on ways to help prevent that and moving forward. And then just to touch quickly on lessons learned, there's a number of things we've learned over the past 6 years, so I wanted to share those quickly with the group here. We definitely think the team approach is important. So not just having a few individuals, but the bigger the group, the more ideas you come up with, both good and bad. You can have things you might think are a good idea, and then somebody comes up with a reason why you shouldn't do that. Focusing the meeting on a single topic has been a big help for us these past 2 years. So instead of having all these scattered ideas, having one single focus topic, like today we're going to talk about utility reconstruction and how we can make those work zones safer. Adhering to the subcommittee's 5 core principles was big. Knowing what our focus is and what we should be focusing our efforts on. Keeping an open mind to all improvement suggestions, no matter how big or how small. And just wanted to note that our crash rates here were reduced because of the accumulation of a number of small improvements. And then creating a process to track these improvements over the years to make sure we get these improvements in the design projects. And then having buy-in and support from your high levels of executive leadership is helpful also. That's all I had for today. If you have any questions, type them in, and I'll do my best to answer them.
Thank you, Tom. Yes, I should have mentioned that at the beginning, but you guys are probably old presentation Zoom experts now. If you would type any questions in, especially as we're going here, and then our presenters will be able to catch up during the next presentation to answer questions. There was only one in the chat and it's been answered, but we welcome questions for Tom and all the panelists or presenters here this morning. So we are going to keep moving on though and go on to our next presentation, which is using SPMTs with project partnering to improve operations. And for this presentation, we have Stephanie Zolnak from PennDOT District 11 and Chris West from Lochner presenting. So again, welcome guys, and I'll turn it straight over to you.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. So throughout the 2019-2020 construction season, approximately 1 mile of State Route 19 was reconstructed and the Shaler Street Bridge overpass was replaced. On this presentation, Stephanie and I will discuss how the project team worked together to implement many different phase configurations that met the contractor's needs and provide the traveling public safe and efficient transportation through the work zone. The project is located just southeast of Pittsburgh and is commonly known as the West End Bypass. As most of you know, when traveling from the Pittsburgh airport to the city, you pass through the Fort Pitt Tunnel. SR 19 is the last exit on I-376 approaching the tunnel. This section of 19 sees 27,000 vehicles a day as it's a major commuter route into the city. The West End Bypass also serves as an access route to Heinz Field and PNC Park. The Shaler Street Bridge passes over 19 and provides access to Pittsburgh's scenic Mount Washington area. The scope of the project includes roadway and structure improvements. The roadway improvements include full depth reconstruction of the 4-lane bifurcated roadway you see here, improvements at the Wabash Street intersection where we extended the deceleration lane in an effort to reduce crashes at this intersection. We replaced the overhead signs like the one you see here near Ramp C. And we also did some grading changes on State Route 19 southbound and Ramp C under Ramp A up here. The existing vertical clearance at the time was about 13.5 feet, and both of these roadways have been lowered to give us the required 16.6. As I said before, the Shaler Street Bridge was replaced. The existing 3-span bridge was replaced using accelerated bridge construction techniques. We replaced this bridge with a new 2-span bridge. The 2 spans were erected in the bridge staging area here adjacent to the project and rolled into place using SPMTs. There were two main goals on this project at the outset. One was to replace this bridge using only 2 weekend closures, 1 weekend to demolish the bridge and 1 weekend to replace the bridge. One of the other goals was to maintain 1 lane of traffic in each direction as roadway reconstruction was completed. It's important to understand that the success of this project was a result of a large team communicating, working well together, and demonstrating what can be accomplished with a partnering approach. As shown in this slide, there are many stakeholders to this project. During design, Lochner and subconsultant McTish worked with PennDOT to develop the traffic control plan. We met with stakeholders such as the City of Pittsburgh, the Sports and Exhibition Authority, and held public meetings. During each meeting, we discussed the scope and the schedule of the project so that there were no surprises and everyone knew what to expect. Our first example of vigorous communication is demonstrated in choosing the move day for the Shaler Street Bridge. The project was let in 2018, and we anticipated utility work through the winter and major construction will begin in 2019 construction season. The project specifications did not allow for the bridge move to occur on weekends with special events, including Steeler football games, citywide races, pit games, or say a concert at Heinz Field. The caveat for contractors during letting was that the 2019 fall Steeler schedule was not known at the time. An additional factor contributed to scheduling the bridge move is that SPMT's equipment is not readily available. There are probably 4 to 5 heavy move contractors in the United States that use SPMT equipment, and this equipment needs to be scheduled months in advance. For this project, Swank was the main contractor, and Swank used Mammoet to perform the bridge move. During the bridge move, the traffic was detoured through the west end. This provided the contractor all the necessary room to complete a large amount of work over a 2-day closure, including placing the bridge move path material, moving 2 70-foot spans into place, removing all the stone used to make the bridge path, cleaning the roadway, and opening up to rush hour traffic the next morning. As construction progressed, it became clear that the move would occur in October. The construction management team kept this calendar to track special events that restrict closures. The original intent of the project was to move the bridge over a weekend. As you can see from this calendar, due to the number of events, that quickly became impossible. So into the project control meeting we went. Folks in attendance included the contractor Swank, with Mammoet on the phone, PennDOT traffic, structures, public relations were all in attendance, along with Lochner, the construction inspection team, and the construction management team, as we came up with a plan for when we could schedule this bridge move. Our first plan and the first available days that really showed themselves were 2 days over Halloween. We had a few unhappy parents because this was encroaching on our trick-or-treat time, but we had 2 clear days in the schedule. Unfortunately, Mother Nature disagreed with this date. Winds were predicted at 45-mile-per-hour gust, and we had to reschedule the move. And those predictions became true. The wind was very bad over those 2 days. The second try was November 1st and 2nd. We knew the EQT 10-mile race was occurring in Pittsburgh on that Saturday, and we also knew that it did not use 19 as part of the race path. A little more investigation into that, and we found out that the race did use the detour route. So that weekend was eliminated as well. Last we landed on November 4th and 5th, were chosen for the move date. A good idea as we were working through this progress, we knew we had a restriction on Sunday. That was not a possible move day. We chose these 2 days, understanding the amount of moved path material that had to be placed on these 2 days. There was a good idea in the meeting to go ahead and close the inbound traffic after the game had started. And then once the game had finished and traffic had let out, we closed the outbound lane to let the contractor have a little more time to place this material. The next slide is the video of the bridge move that took place on that Monday and Tuesday. You can see in this picture all the move path material that was necessary for the SPMTs to keep the structure level as they were moved into place. The first span they moved was span 2. These SPMTs move at about 4 miles per hour. You can see we had about a foot of clearance through some of the local buildings. Span 2 moved through span 1, past the bifurcated area, and then was moved into its final location. Span 1 was moved the following day. During the move, State Route 19 was closed, and the contractor had plenty of room to perform the work. However, for the rest of the construction, project traffic operations had to be maintained with 1 lane of traffic, in each direction. Stephanie is here to tell you about some of the plan changes, new ideas, discoveries along the way that made this project successful.
And thank you, Chris, for walking us through that extraordinary partnering with an almost impossible schedule. The successful coordination of the Shaler Street Bridge replacement using SPMTs over Route 19 typically overshadows the rest of the project. However, the majority of the traffic control plan was required for concrete reconstruction of just about 2 miles of the project.
Hey, Steph, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if you want to switch your screens right now, it's showing the presenter view, just so you can get the right frame in the screen. If you want to maybe unshare or try. Sorry to interrupt you. Technology, it's a beautiful thing. And there we have it, perfectly done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kelly. All right, so our original design was set up to reconstruct the inside lanes, then the outside lanes. And this was entirely due to the roadway being partially bifurcated near the area with the Interstate 376 interchange. Once the contractor was awarded the bid, they looked at ways to increase their productivity. The contractor acquired their own designer to propose a crossover in order to work on one side of the road at a time. The original designer and PennDOT quickly worked through multiple reviews and meetings without much time, since the construction clock was already ticking. Finally, the contractor had received partial approval for the majority of the roadway reconstruction using a crossover. In the area of the 376 interchange, however, with the bifurcated area, the contractor had to continue with the original design concept. The partnering of our original designer, Lochner, PennDOT, the contractor, and their designer was tremendous to approve a modified traffic control plan so quickly. The 3 key benefits to this partnering effort was to keep the contractor on schedule, which was challenging, also to allow the contractor to increase their efficiency, and they decided to slip form the concrete. We also saw an increase for the safety of the workers, since the entire side of the road was closed off to traffic, and this allowed at times for the permanent barrier and the temporary barrier to buffer the workers from the traveling public, in addition to a greater offset from that location. Throughout our discussions with the contractor on this crossover, as you can see in the picture, they also wanted to close down Ramp C, which is the ramp that connects Route 19 to I-376, to complete their ramp reconstruction, and also for assisting in their full mainline crossover concept, that we did not approve that full request. So ramp C, as you can see in the picture, is on the right. And as Chris had mentioned previously, we reconstructed this and lowered the elevation due to what you can see as a sign showing a low clearance of 13 feet 6 inches. And the above structure is ramp A, which we were not replacing. So due to high ADT and also the bifurcated section on Route 19, their request for a long-term closure was not approved. The original traffic control design of half-width construction had to remain. However, the contractor again proposed a long-term closure due to what they perceived as a constructability concern. Ramp C was to be reconstructed 5 feet lower than its original grade in order to eliminate a low clearance. And their claim was that the equipment could not drive the sheet piles needed to support the adjacent lane underneath the structure that you see in the picture. So after much discussion and coordination, a compromise was agreed upon. Instead of using a long-term closure, which would impact high traffic volumes during our peak hours, we utilized a weekend closure to excavate the entire ramp down 5 feet. Then we placed temporary asphalt on the ramp to complete the construction using half-width setups, just as we originally intended. This ramp is highly used by the stadium traffic and also the baseball traffic from all the fields. So we had to coordinate with our stakeholders on which weekend we could close this ramp also. All right, and this is the final picture of our great product of the ramp C reconstructed, and you can also see that the low clearance has been removed. So this was just another great example of working together with the contractor and the designers to ensure that great traffic operations occurred throughout all of construction, all the while understanding the contractor's perspective of being efficient and lowering their costs. Initially unsuccessful with a long-term closure of ramp C, which would have greatly impacted the public. In the end, a weekend closure ended up being a phenomenal success. So we're really proud of that. The last major partnering effort I'll discuss was quite unexpected. Historically, we saw queues on ramp A, as you can see in the photo, due to its yielding condition at ramp C for traffic. And this always backed up onto 19 during peak hours before construction. So during our initial design, we discussed our concerns that ramp A now would back up into a construction zone, which decreased 2 lanes to 1 lane, and therefore causing a major traffic flow issue on Route 19. This was also a huge concern from a safety perspective because there's an adjacent off-ramp from 376 that could potentially be impacted, and we could have stoppages of traffic backed onto our interstate, approaching the Squirrel Hill, the Fort Pitt tunnels, excuse me. A PennDOT idea coming from our team member was proposed to use the shoulder further up on the ramp as an add lane instead of yielding. We had the room with a shoulder, we just had to reconstruct it. And this has been discussed for a future interchange project, so why not do it now to improve our traffic operations temporarily? Originally, once the contractor saw the plans, they didn't see the need for reconstructing the shoulder and providing 2 lanes so that traffic could free flow and then merge later up the ramp to reduce congestion concerns. So they proposed eliminating that work. That would both save them time and it would save us money. However, with Lochner and all their design efforts behind us, PennDOT did not agree to that. And we explained the need for improving operations here. Once it was implemented in construction, the results were even better than we expected. Ramp A queues were minimized greatly, and Lochner and the department worked together to change these things permanently. A safety review meeting at PennDOT and a final approval was given. Although not much crash data has been archived just yet after the widening to show the exact comparisons, our PennDOT tunnel maintenance manager notified the designer that they have not had to respond to any incidents since the widening occurred. And since the maintenance building in the picture is right in the center, they had responded to most incidents that require their assistance. And this had always been claimed as a trouble spot for them. So this was a great safety improvement that we can't wait to see the greater impacts in the future, and hopefully a very high reduction in incidents on those ramps. So in summary, through all of our construction innovations on this project, all the challenges we ran into, and all the traffic changes, the partnering that we all worked together with was actually the key to our success of this project. Thank you, and I'll pass this over to Kelly Riggett.
Thanks, Stephanie. Well, I was monitoring the Q&A and seems like people are taking it easy on you guys right now. There doesn't seem to be any right at the moment, but I'm sure there's some, not that I'm, trying to get you guys questions, but, if we were in person, I'd be harassing everybody about asking some questions of our presenters. So if you have anything, feel free to type it into the box, and then we'll get answering here while our next presentation gets going. So we will move on to the next presentation, which is Ben Schneider and Hannah Landvader from RK&K, who will be sharing with us an automated work zone speed enforcement update that Tom kind of previewed there a little bit, didn't want to steal their thunder. So, we're going to get the full update from Ben and Hannah. And so Ben and Hannah, if you want to take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. I guess at this point, we've finally crossed the noontime meridian here. Wanted to talk to everyone today, kind of give an update on the automated work zone speed enforcement program. I'm sure some, maybe most of you have experienced some of our presentations previously. Kind of have a feel for the program, but we kind of wanted to talk today about, what are some of the things that we've been finding with the program? What's our recap from 2020, and where are we going moving forward into 2021? So with that, we'll just get right into it. We'll give a quick review of the, kind of the basics of the program, how the program operates, how the technology works, just for those that might not be familiar with the program or familiar with the technology. So the unit technology, it's all self-contained in a white Jeep Grand Cherokee for our program. There's a dual radar system in there. There's a tracking radar and a point radar. Both of those radars have to agree within a high level confidence level for a violation to be recorded. So, right as soon as the unit is taking a speed reading, really that's, if those two radars don't agree, it scrubs that, and a violation isn't recorded. There are cameras mounted both in and on the Jeep Grand Cherokee that collect the images for any vehicle that is in violation, and the software uploads to a back office system for violation processing and review. And as a reminder, with the AWZSE program, the violation occurs whenever anyone is exceeding the posted speed limit in a work zone by 11 miles an hour or more. Forgot to mention that previously. So the process, once a violation is captured by the unit, the speed timing devices detect that excessive speed, like I said, 11 miles an hour or more over the posted speed limit. The cameras take both front and rear images of the license plates. The reason that we do this and not just rear is to capture the commercial vehicles, so front plates on mainly tractor trailers, so that we can enforce to all travelers through the work zone. Additionally, some of the other states that require both a front and rear plate, even on passenger vehicles, if the rear plate is obstructed or damaged for any reason, we can go back to the records and be able to pull the license plate information from the front plate on those vehicles. Then the responsible party is identified. The legislation defined that the registered owner is responsible for the violation when it's captured. The driver, even if they weren't driving, the registered owner is the responsible party. So we look up based on the license plate return, both state and obviously the characters. We look up the DMV return information. We verify that information. Does the DMV information that comes back match the vehicle that's in the image? Making sure that we're not having vehicle mismatch issues. That the DMV return comes back with a 2014 Kia and the image shows a 2020 Mazda or something along those lines. So making sure that verification happens. Additionally, PSP is involved with the program, and they review all of the fine carrying penalties, violations, and then we notify the registered owner. There are timeframes established within the legislation within which we need to get the violations out to the responsible party, the registered owner. So we make sure that those dates are hit. So again, just a really quick, really high level review of the program and how it operates. Now we'll kind of come into what's the recap from 2020? What's the news? What's the good news? What's the bad news? So where we've been in 2020, coordination. Back at the start of 2020, we were traveling around to every PennDOT district and providing kind of informational sessions for their designers, for their construction personnel, for their maintenance personnel. What's the background of this program? What's the program hope to do? What is the program? What isn't the program? Kind of get some lines of communication established so that we can, have open discussion throughout the year of, hey, this project's coming up. This looks like a good place potentially for deployment. Let's figure out a way to get the unit out there. While we were actually on the on our trip out west, hitting districts 1, 10, and 12, that's kind of when all the COVID stuff happened. So we transitioned those into a virtual environment with the remaining districts that we had to coordinate with. Additionally, we've held these coordination meetings with Turnpike personnel as well across the state, both construction, design, and maintenance personnel. The active work zone is mentioned numerous times in the enabling legislation for the AWZSE program. That has required immense coordination with our project contacts to make sure that the projects are active, that workers are going to be present and active within the work zone, because that is a requirement for enforcement. Additionally, requiring our vendor to verify that worker presence, not only at the start, but throughout their 8-hour deployment shift. That's increased coordination, increased monitoring that we need to do on the program. So that's really increased the amount of coordination that's required for the program. Additionally, we've had some outreach activities with other states. Other states are seeing what we're doing, seeing how we're operating the program, seeing how our legislation got passed, basically how we got to where we are today. So we've been having some outreach sessions with some other states, both on the DOT side, as well as some of the contracting communities in other states as well. So talking more specifically about our deployments, we did some early testing starting back in November of 2019. And then the legislatively mandated 60-day pre-enforcement period really started in January of this year. Official deployments began March 9th of this year, and then were placed on hiatus on March 16th due to the lack of construction activity, because that's kind of when all the COVID stuff sort of came to the fore. With regards to construction and maintenance activities, we've supported 55 unique construction projects across the state. And we've had 8 unique PennDOT maintenance deployments, as well as deploying to Turnpike maintenance system wide. We have had a deployment in every PennDOT district at this point. We've deployed to Turnpike maintenance in all 5 of their maintenance districts, and we've really gotten these units spread out across the state. Just in our first 10 months of operation. In really 9 months, because we were basically shut down for a month's worth of time in there back in March and April with the whole COVID shutdown. And during our peak periods, we got up over 100 deployments per week during the peak work activity periods. So that's both PennDOT and Turnpike. We were getting over 100 deployments per week. So now we'll move on. I think a lot of folks here at the conference are interested in numbers, data, crunching numbers, that sort of thing. So let's talk about some of the statistics and analysis that we've done and some of the trends that we've seen over our first 9-10 months of enforcement. So at this point, we've had over 1,700 deployments, and that's from March 9th to now. We are just under 200,000 violations being issued out to motorists. Again, a reminder that the first violation is a zero fine warning. The second violation is a $75 fine. And the third and all subsequent violations to that registered owner are $150 each of those times. So we've had 200,000 violations, and that's first, second, or third and subsequent issued for the program so far. We've seen a repeat violator rate of just over 12%. So this is that's the number of folks that have received their second and more violations. With regards to speeds, from a high point in April, which, like I mentioned, that was when all the COVID shutdown kind of happened, speeds have consistently declined since April. The speeds were high in April, with less volume on the roadways. People were just, putting the hammer down, flying. But speeds have consistently decreased since that point, and that trend is continuing. Speeds have been higher in barrier protected projects than the channelizer protected projects. That's a trend that we've been seeing throughout the program. That the folks seem to be respecting the speed limit a little bit more in work zones where you don't have that level of protection between the traffic and the workers that are present in the work zone. So whether that's a function of people paying it more attention or just respecting the speed limit, respecting the increased risk out there when that barrier protection isn't present. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Hannah to kind of go a little bit more in depth with some of these statistics and data that we've recorded this year.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. The first more in-depth program statistic we're going to cover is potential violations per deployment. When we say potential violations, these aren't mailed violations. These are violations that enter the system after that scrubbing that Ben talked about. So if the radars don't match and they get thrown out, those are not included in this count, but anything that does match that then enters into their back office, that's what we mean when we say a potential violation. You can see here they're broken down, data is through the end of October, broken down by agency and then total. And then it's important to note that the violations per deployment is an average over the time period the program's been active. We do have deployments where we have 0, and then we have deployments where we have a lot more than 0. So it's important to note that that is an average. The next statistic we're going to talk about is some of the speed stuff that Ben was just talking about. As you can see here in this graph, the black line is the percent over the posted speed limit. So any vehicles that were traveling at or above what is posted on the roadway. And then the orange line is the percent excessive speeding. And that excessive speeding metric is that 11 miles per hour or above the posted speed limit on the roadway that tags as a violation in the system. So you can see that spike in April that we talked about due to the COVID shutdowns. And then in May, it was back around where we had started in March, and since then has slowly decreased. It has kind of steadied out the past couple of months, but it does continue to decrease as we move forward. The next thing we're going to talk about are some success stories. So a little bit of background for the projects that are listed here. I-78 Section 12M is a PennDOT project. It's a reconstruction and widening project that's happening between mile marker 35 and mile marker 45 on I-78. And then the other project there, the I-476 A31 to A38, is the total reconstruction job that Tom had mentioned earlier as part of his presentation. The numbers listed here, and the thing to note, the PennDOT or the I-78 project is posted at 50 miles per hour, making the threshold speed 61. And then the Turnpike project is posted at 55, making that threshold 66. The September 2019 speeds, all of these speeds are average NRIC speeds for the weekdays in the months that are listed. As you can see, in September of 2019, the average speeds in these work zones were at what we now consider to be the threshold speed and have slowly decreased as the program has been operational. The next thing we're going to talk about are work zone crashes. So these are this graph shows total work zone crashes from January through October for all 3 years listed. In 2018 and 2019, the work zone crashes throughout the state were totaling around 1,600 crashes. And then for the 2020, it's slightly over 800 crashes. An important thing to note is the AWZSE program isn't taking credit for the entire decrease for work zone crashes this year. We think also contributing factors are lower volumes that were traveling the roadways in that March, April, May timeframe, and that month-long pause on construction projects in March and April. The next, one of the last statistics we're going to talk about is statistics by type of worker protection. Ben talked about this a little bit. This graph kind of highlights where we've been and what kind of projects we've been to. As you can see, we've deployed to double the amount of deployments in channelizer work zones than we have in barrier. But channelizer violations make up about 1/3 of our total violations compared to what we see in barrier protected work zones. So it's just important to note that what Ben had mentioned before, vehicles are traveling much faster in our barrier protected work zones than in our channelizer protected work zones. And then the last thing statistic wise we're going to talk about is specifically to turnpike deployments. So this table shows deployments and then potential violations broken down by 4 specific types of projects that we've gone to. So we've been to total reconstruction projects on the turnpike, your traditional mill fill projects, some bridge work projects, and then the maintenance deployments that we've talked about. One thing to note from the graph, as you can see, is we've been to about the same amount as total recon deployments as mill fill projects, but you can see about 83% of the total violations for the turnpike come from total reconstruction projects, even though it's shared deployment number wise as the mill fill. So just another example of barrier protected projects having much higher speeds than channelizer protected projects. And with that, I will be turning it back over to Ben.
Thanks, Hannah. One thing that I wanted to touch on as well before we leave this slide, to put some numbers to it. On the turnpike side, 42% of all turnpike deployments have taken place on the total recon jobs. And yet 82% of all the violations on the turnpike system have come from those total recon jobs. So less than half of our deployments, and yet much more than half of our violations have come from the total recon. And those percentages for maintenance are, 10% of all deployments, but only 2% of the violations. So that really, gives a striking example of that barrier versus channelizer thing that we're kind of hitting home here. So where are we going in 2021? Let's look ahead to some future goals here. With projects, we're going to continue to support a variety of activities. Obviously, right now we're kind of into the winter slowdown period, not as much construction activity going on, less opportunities for us to deploy out there due to the active work zone requirement. Additionally, we're identifying new and existing projects that we can get out to. This year, we were really getting going with program startup. So we were kind of more reactive to active projects versus being more proactive. So heading into the 2021 construction season, we're able to be a lot more proactive in terms of identifying and assigning deployments to projects. In terms of operation, again, as our vendor has brought on more folks for the field staff, there should be smoother operation. They know what coordination needs to be done. They know what questions to ask. They know where they should be setting up with regards to the workers. So that coordination and conversation should be smoother heading into 2021. Additionally, we were just kind of throwing AWZSE at all sorts of different stuff this year. With that knowledge gain, we know what activities are conducive and which ones are not conducive to receiving AWZSE deployments and which ones, you know, are most appropriate. So that can help with our project selection and screening heading into 2021. Finally, 2021, once we hit March, you know, March and April of next year, we'll have a full year of data under our belt to review and analyze. And obviously the kind of the key metrics, some of those data and statistics that Hannah discussed in detail, you know, we're going to be continuing to monitor those, make sure that the gains are still being made with this program, and make sure that this program is still providing benefit to Pennsylvania motorist travelers, as well as the workers within the work zone. With that, I want to thank you all for your time, and I'll turn it back over to Kelly.
Thanks, Ben and Hannah. Well, we were super efficient and right on our timing today. Good job, everyone. There were some questions in the chat that I think for the previous presentations have been answered. And Ben and Hannah, you did just get 3 questions here at the end, which the official end time of the session is 12:30, but we have a few minute buffer. So I don't know if you want to answer any of those live, or we will type in the answers, and the people asking the questions will get the answers communicated back to them. So there is just a few questions here, but I just want to thank all of the presenters for their time, and thank all of our attendees for jumping in the session here and being with us. And we will get you those answers to any of those questions. And thank you for sharing with us and seeing how we're all working to improve operations in work zones. It's a great thing that I think we all feel pretty strongly about. So it's great to see a lot of these improvements coming. Thanks so much today for your time today. Have a good one.